Prime versus zoom lenses. Which one is better for landscape photography? It's an answer that photographers avoid because, well, it's complicated. The biggest differences between these two lenses is the ability to change focal lengths, as zoom lenses give you a variety of different focal lengths to choose from, which is greatly beneficial for landscape photography because compositions are everything. Focal length allows you to grab different kinds of compositions, and having a zoom gives you the versatility to adjust whatever scene you're in. And in landscape photography, you want to be prepared to work with different subjects that could vary in distance, whereas a prime lens only gives you one focal length to work with, which can limit the different types of compositions you can grab, making it difficult to get the exact composition you need to capture the different subjects. To me, this is the biggest difference between these two types of lenses and is what separates each other. But there's also one other major difference, which has to deal with the lens's aperture. Prime lenses tend to have faster apertures like f1.8, which may not seem to be that big of a deal for landscapes at first glance, since majority of the time you'll be shooting at a stop down aperture like f8 for the best corner-to-corner sharpness. But prime lenses have a huge advantage when it comes to shooting astrophotography, because you want a fast aperture to let as much light into the frame as possible for lower noise and a faster shutter speed, whereas zoom lenses tend to have slower shutter speeds. For example, this 28-400 is an f4 to f8, definitely not fast at all. These are the biggest differences between the prime and the zoom lens, but when it comes to picking out your telephoto or wide angle, how does this affect that choice? When it comes to deciding whether a prime or a zoom lens is best for your wide angle, it's a bit of a mixed bag. You see, when I use my wide angle lens, I'm sticking to the widest focal length high majority of the time. I like to have a very wide angle field of view to capture everything into the frame, to exaggerate foreground elements or showcase curvature in the frame. And it helps when I'm including multiple elements in the photo, as it gives a large enough field of view to put everything I want to capture into the image. So me being at the same focal length majority of the time means I can get away with using a prime lens without much of an issue, which seems like a prime lens might be best suited to be a wide angle lens. But is this really the case? Well, not quite. When I capture my wide angle photos, there are times where I want to zoom in slightly to remove unwanted subjects. Whether that's unappealing shrubbery or bushes in the foreground, zooming in slightly helps to have a cleaner composition overall. Of course, you could do all these things in post-production, but I'd rather get it right in the camera the first time than having to do it after you've taken the image. But in reality, I rarely need to change my focal length to cut out those subjects, and I'll rarely zoom in to capture my subject in the first place. Most of the time, I'm moving closer because that wide angle field of view is a great perspective for expansive landscapes. However, the biggest area you'll see the most difference in between the prime and the zoom lens is when it comes to aperture. Having a fast prime lens makes capturing astrophotography easy for all the reasons I mentioned before, like having a faster shutter speed and less noise. And when shooting astro, your wide angle lens is the most important, so you can get more of the Milky Way in frame with the foreground. So if you're big into astro, it might not be a bad idea to consider the prime lens as your wide angle lens, since you can still use it very effectively for traditional landscape photography, but at the same time, have a beast to capture the stars with it. Your wide angle lens can definitely get away with being a prime lens and still capture great images. But if you don't shoot a lot of astrophotography, then I would stick with a zoom lens because it's just gonna be more beneficial when it comes to grabbing the perfect composition. But what about telephoto lenses? Well, this is a bit of a different story, because being able to change out your focal length with your telephoto lenses is much more important versus your wide angles. The biggest reason for this is when capturing telephoto landscapes, your subjects tend to vary in distance and size, meaning you'll need a variety of different focal lengths to choose from when capturing different subjects. Which is why I use this lens, the 28-400, as my telephoto lens of choice. Whether it's capturing faraway mountain peaks or beach cliffsides out in the distance, this lens can capture it all at pretty much any focal length that I want. It having a long focal range makes it easy to go from wide to telephoto at a moment's notice very easily, and is a huge advantage when you're in situations where you have to be flexible and adapt to whatever the landscape gives you. And for me, this is a huge reason why I rarely use prime lenses as my telephoto lens. That lens would be the 135mm f1.8s Plena. And don't get me wrong, this is an incredible lens and the best lens I've ever used optically. And for landscape photography, this is actually a nice focal length to work with. However, I do feel restricted when using this lens because I feel like I can't get the exact composition that I want. It's why I rarely bring this lens out to shoot telephoto landscapes and end up sticking with the 20-400 for its versatility. But one aspect about the Plena that makes it unique versus the 20-400 is that fast aperture. When I do use the Plena, I focus a lot on utilizing my foreground and blurring it out for a different type of vibe in my landscape. Where I would normally use an aperture of f8 to get corner to corner sharpness, I can now use the foreground blur to draw attention to my main subject matter in the background. It's different from how I would traditionally shoot landscapes, but gives a different sort of aesthetic appeal that I wouldn't normally capture. Although this is a very unique perspective to capture, I would still recommend sticking to a zoom lens as your telephoto lens. The versatility of the different focal lengths is far more important than the fast aperture of a prime lens, because getting the correct composition is always more beneficial. At the end of the day, prime lenses will have a place in a lot of photographers' bags, but zoom lenses will always be the superior choice for landscape photography. Their versatility in compositions is huge and can make or break certain images. Of course, you're always more than welcome to test out both these different types of lenses and see what works for you. But over these past 8 years, this is what I found works best for me when capturing my landscape photography. So what type of lens do you prefer for your landscape photography? Prime lenses or zoom lenses? Let me know down in the comment section down below. Anyways guys, thank you so much for experiencing the world with me today, and if you want to check out another video, see it right here.